short period.
I actually agree with you.
I
very rarely
to a short.
when I'm davening, I go to mincha.
I leave it on the car.
I do agree. I have this thing of people davening from films. It's can't stand that. I really can't stand that.
Shall I tell you what we're being offered?
No. Okay, that already. Like,
I think you can.
Really, really bashar.
Yeah, power crisis. We're being millions.
But you get people in a shul who are using really cool. We're done like that they're dabbling from the same.
Well, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
To go there, you assume now.
In an airport, I don't know.
Yeah, probably because you haven't got.
Who doesn't have? Who travels without a siddur?
People nowadays do everything online.
A person who travels without a siddur is a rachmanos.
Who doesn't have a siddur in telephone?
No, actually, I have mine only has chapter.
But truth is, if you've got shackles, you know that it's easy to know.
Oh, I had what's the word? The Yekish person, my cousin this morning. Do you know that person moved to Manchester? What's it called? Zaltzman's father-in-law. You should know. It's Yekish.
I don't know every single Yekka out in the world.
Come on. He said Shaleo Sani Nochi. He had yard side, not yard side today or something. Yeah.
Well, what's the problem with that?
Shaleo Sani, no, it's fine, but it's that. It's his.
It's like when a couple of weeks ago when there was this whole thing outside Haggard in London.
What?
I don't know, there was a guy, a whole cocktail bomb, an explosive, I don't know, there was police, there was nobody there. So basically somebody said that's the most exciting things that happened in Haggard in 1985.
Tell me, it's still Zaltzman's.
Of course, sorry.
Erlanger's moved to Manchester.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know who I'm talking about? Switzerland. Do you know who I'm talking about, Tolly? Erlanger. He had yard side today. And he davened with the Yekish Habora. And I was enjoying listening to Shalio Sadi Nochi and all the words, the voweling, like monks. Do you ever daven monks?
Yeah, but I grew up in Amsterdam. I grew up like that.
That's right, so used to it.
My grandfather was a guying and an owl.
And that's right. Oh, no. So this morning I have the pleasure.
Where was that?
Chaniche. He's moved to Manchester. It's quite nice. It's moved to Prestige.
You know why? Lots of people are moving.
Yeah.
Most people living in flats. And those that are like council. The councils redone. Living there without any kids.
Of course, he's doing the But of course, it doesn't really. It's going to be a party. There's going to be a party this year. There's going to be more learning and less party. Yeah,
that's a good time. This year will probably be quite.
But I thought at least after bringing the cake yesterday, I thought you should overlap it.
Has someone done an Irish I want to do a concert indoor biking.
There is such a thing as indoor biking. I once heard about like a round room. Oh, have you ever been on such a thing?
On a velodrome, no.
Why?
No, you just can't.
Well, you remember that
No, not trained. You have to it's a different type of. No brakes on the bike. No gears on the bike.
There's no brakes.
Once you're going, you're going.
How do you stop?
You pedal backwards.
Yeah, pedal
backwards.
Yeah, but it's not so simple.
Slow down.
Very difficult.
Okay, one day. You have to have dreams.
What do you mean?
To what?
Sponsored by.
What is she doing to him? We should take it away, please. Just get him upset and wants to tell us. He does, he gets upset. No, so put against the Swarm. The Swarm don't get hurt. But it's not personal. Depends, you're going down and uphill. If you're going downhill, you could do 70 kilometers.
No, you got it on a stand.
Ah. I wouldn't mind going downhill for 70 kilometers.
Ben, you can see you're not from where from one.
Not say how much. But
Yeah, I'll do it for any challenge. Any challenge that wants to help me.
How are you?
Oh, it's happening.
I saw you today. What are you
No,
trying?
yesterday I was sitting there eating barbecue steak.
20th of June.
I didn't even
Well,
ride.
you actually wanted to carry on riding
I didn't
once.
even ride a meter.
I thought it didn't happen last year. That's on Father's Day.
Okay, let's go along daf. Let's start. Also very exciting daf. All I gathered. We're up to Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, about 10 lines after the Mishnah. Since the Mishnah mentioned about a woman with a father's house, a husband's house, we go on a tangent to talk about husband and wife, and the comparison to compare Klal Yisrael to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a husband and wife, which is the basis of the whole sefer of which? Shiur. So it says Ksiv. Pasuk says it actually in some Gemara says Kedich Ksiv, like it's written, and everybody is Magia, everybody edits it. It's meant to say Ksiv. When Mashiach comes, Numa Hashem Tikvi Ishi, you'll call me my husband. You will not call me any longer my master. When a girl gets married, in the beginning she's embarrassed of her husband. She doesn't call him in endearing terms because she's too shy. Once she's comfortable and relaxed with her husband, then what happens is she can speak to him in a more closer language, right? So when Mashiach comes, the pasuk describes how Klal Yisrael will speak to Hashem. They'll call him Ishi, which is a notion of nisuin, of marriage. V'lo bali, are not an expression of my master. Others explain that there's a difference between Kedushin and Nisuin, as we all know that in the old days they used to do first Kedushin, then Erusin, then Nisuin. So Mashiach will be the stage of Nisuin. It will not be just the stage of Kedushin. Kedushin is a lower level of closeness. When Mashiach comes, it will all be like Nosut married to Hashem. Oh, sorry, he said Kala Beis Chavir Kala Savir, like Kala in the father-in-law's house, not the Kala at home, where she's still embarrassed. This is the pasuk towards the end of Shirashim, which the pasuk describes a moshel of Klal Yisrael, and he describes Klal Yisrael like a young sister who is not yet fully matured and was concerned about how to look after her. But the Gemara over here gives different explanations. This is a reference to Elam, where Daniel lived. Rashi says, Daniel was able to learn a lot of Torah, but Daniel never taught a lot of Torah. Now, Mashenkin Bovel taught a lot of Torah as well. That is Ezra. Now, Rashi, that's what Rashi says over here. Rashi in Kedushin says that it is referring to Mordechai Tzaddik, that he was Mezoicha to learn Torah, but he never was Zoicha to teach Torah. And Rashi there says, oh, why? Because he taught them for those 3 days. We don't know if he set up a whole yeshiva like Ezra did. The reason was because Klal Yisrael didn't want to listen. So Rashi says over here, listen the heavens and I will speak. When there's somebody listening, then it's easy to talk. When there's nobody listening, it is very, very hard to speak. Even Moshe Rabbeinu said, I can't talk if nobody's listening. Said Hashem, it's not a chison in Daniel and Mordechai Tzaddik. It was a chison in the door that they weren't ready to listen. Ani chaymo v'shadaika migdalos more mashalim omar bichnan ani chaymo. Oh, let's go about symbolism. A wall is a protection, right? If you've got a city with a wall around it, protects. Migdalos is a tower. What's better, a tower over a wall? You've got a view, and it's a place from which you can do more than just protect yourself. It's a spot which provides protection for the whole area around. You build a tower, and then that is like a castle, and it's meant to provide protection because from there it's a stronghold, which is much more than a wall. Says the Gemara, different examples. Torah is a wall, but without the Chachamim teaching it, then you don't have the ability to have the tower houses. And that's what they compared to Shadaim. Shadaim literally means breast. Breast feed and nurse. Talmidei Chachamim, they nurse Torah, so they are like towers of protection. That's the shuls where some people like Yeshua is trying very hard to Mekadesh the shuls. And here the Gemara is trying to say that are places of tower houses of protection. The The pasuk. Does anybody say this song anymore? Friday night, Motzei Shabbos. Does anybody sing this nigga that's on Motzei Shabbos?
Before
Mariv.
in that song they do.
What? No, not Got Avraham. No.
I know the
Before Mariv. Yeah, the dog.
Yeah.
The Yekkes always sing it. The Sfardim and Altera used to sing it.
Oh yeah.
Altera sing it here. Tony, Altera still sing it.
Grandfather.
Who's your grandfather?
Mr. Hummel, yeah, he's still.
He does it. My father gets very upset that people don't do it anymore.
Don't do it. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Ashebonenu, our sons, kinetim. Like more now, Darshans what it means. Ashebonenu kinetim, like young saplings. Edu bachuri yisol tamu tamchet. A young tree is still not yet got blemishes. As a tree gets old, it gets inside into kinds of cracks and things. So young boys of Christ are not in the navios like young saplings. And they or like corners. They lock up the entrances for the husbands. Rashi says to pshatim either it means that they are not bezana, so they close themselves up for others, they're literally the entrances. Another pshat Rashi says is that when they're nidus, they tell Ugdus Lashon Magid to speak. They tell their husbands that they're nidus. Even when they're full of desire, they're able to stop themselves. Here the Gemara uses a psukim to prove that the word kazovios, corners, has a similar connotation as full. Because if you hear the Gemara wants to use the idea that they're full of taiva, they still have control. Rashi explains that the pasuk is just the pasuk there is referring to our shvoch in the future will bring success to Klal Yisrael, and what will happen is we'll drink wine like full bowls of wine, Moshe. Yeah, we'll have full bowls of wine.
Oh.
Yes, bowls. There won't be enough cups. There are bowls of wine. You have like these big salad bowls full of wine. But so Rashi says that the molu and the zovius is the same thing. Tosis says like the corners of Mizbeach, just like the corners of Mizbeach is full of blood. It's a remez that Gazovius refers to blood. Our storehouses are filled mizan elzan from produce to produce, established into the framework of the heichal. Elu ve'elu, both the boys and the girls were makbid not to be mizana. It's as if the Beis Hamikdash was built in their days. It's as if the Beis was built in the days. Rashi tells a number of places of the person's makpid not to do znus. A person is perish min elva, automatically there's kedusha. So when boys and girls are makpid not to be nichshal and chet, it's as if they're building the Beis Hamikdash because they're bringing kedusha into Klal Yisrael. The Nefesh HaChaim writes in Sha'alef that when the person Chasson thinks a immoral thought, it's like he's bringing a tselem into the heichal, because what happens is that when the person has immorality, that takes away the kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash. I don't say very short word from Shimshon Shafal Hirsch on this. It says like this. It says like this that the Pasuk here compares the girls to zovius. Very good. Zovius or cornerstones. He says like this: when you build a building, anybody into building, you build. What they do is, he's actually online. There's quite a few people. Suri can tell us if this is true. What you do is you take a cornerstones and you put them in the corners, and then once you've got the framework, you build all the walls according to the framework which is already built, and afterwards the cornerstones are barely visible. He says girls are compared to the cornerstones of a building. They're not so visible, they're not out and about, you're not supposed to at least be in the public eye, but the entire building is built on the framework which they set up. A Yiddish home has always got their foundations is based, that means they are the ones who channel the behavior. The Gemara now goes at great length to describe the first psukim in Hosea. If you ever look in Hosea, the first two psukim of Hosea, it describes what the Gemara over here is going to tell us also, and it's the most powerful message you can imagine. What happened was Hashem told Hosea that Klal Yisrael have done averos. So what did Hosea say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Hashem said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if they did averos, what should you do? Get a different nation. They've done so many averos, there's no point keeping them anymore. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very, very annoyed with Hosea. So what he did was, he told him, take for yourself a woman who is a zoina, meaning a woman where you anyway don't know if she's faithful to you, so that marriage is not the best to start off with, and have some children which you're not even sure that the children are yours. And after he had a wife and 3 children, he then said to Hosea, now send them packing. And Yeshua said, I can't. It's my wife and my children. Hashem said to Yeshua, you can't send away a woman we barely like, etc., etc. And you expect me to send, children, you expect me to send away Klal Yisrael. Hashem was very, very upset with Yeshua. He says, Shom quotes this in the end of Perek Tes, that he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu only loves those who love Klal Yisrael. It's very powerful. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only loves those who love Klal Yisrael. And he only chooses leaders who defend Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara now goes through those psukim at greater length to describe the symbolism and the ideas behind all of it. So first of all, because the word of Hashem, which was to Hoshea, he was a Navi in the day of 4 different kings: Uziyahu, Yosam, Achaz, and Chizkiah. There was 4 kings. That means he was a Navi, and his prophecy lasted the reign of 4 different kings. And Moses says, but there were 4 Nevi'im that existed at that time. Who were the 4 Nevi'im? The 4 Nevi'im were Hoshea, Yeshaya, Amos, and Micha. Rashi, if you look at the second wide lines of Rashi, brings psukim to prove all of this. But the truth of the matter is, it's quite a lot of Rashi to go through. That there were 4 Nevi'im that all gave 4 famous Nevi'im. What were they? Hoshea, Yeshaya, Amos, and Micha. The Gadol shebechol Hoshea, the greatest of them all was Hoshea. It's interesting because we all know Yeshaya, but Hoshea we barely hear of. The Gemara Bava Basra actually asks the question: if Hoshea was the greatest, why was he included in the Treyasa into one of 12, and Yeshaya is given his own book completely? Anybody know the answer? Why is Yeshaya his own sefer and Hoshea is one of 12? You know the 24 Sifrei Nevi'im, right? And of the 24 is one of the Treyasa. The more answers, because since Hoshea's Nevuah was short, we were scared that it would get lost, so they included it with others that they shouldn't get lost. Okay. So God is going to Hoshea. Hashem spoke to him first. Is that the first person Hashem spoke to? There were many Nevi'im. Yeshaya, Amos, and Micha. These were the 4 Nevi'im. Hashem spoke to him first. Your sons Klal Yisrael have done Averos. Yeshaya should have replied, you HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your sons, the sons of the people that you favor. The others who go as the sons of the ones that you tested. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were people that he tested. When they are Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the sons of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and you should let your mercy roll over them. Not only did Hoshea not speak like that, he said, the whole world belongs to you. Choose another nation. The Yehuda says, that Hoshea was so frustrated when he saw Klal Yisrael doing it. People walk around and they see Yidden misbehaving, see Yidden talking to Shul, they see Yidden going in the streets on Purim, and they're critical. You have to remember, they say, how can Klal Yisrael behave like that? You have to remember that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wasn't thrilled with Hoshea criticizing. What should I do to this old man, Hoshea, to convince him to realize that what he's done is wrong? He said to him, take for yourself an Ishal Zoyna and Yaldi is Nunim. There's a fascinating halachic, what's probably not to marry a Zoyna, except for a Kohen is not allowed to. We saw it's not to marry. Okay. There is an Ezra and Radak that say it was a mashal and it never actually happened. It was just a dream. But the Pashtus wasn't like that. Many argue vehemently that you can't say such things. I just say interesting thing. I must admit it's a halachic issue. Bottom Rashi, V'yalde is nunim. Sheteilu lecha bonim is nunim. Safik shalcha, safik shalachem. Have children who are from the son of a zoyna. You don't know if they're yours. So Rashi paskins, so to speak, that if you marry a zoyna, you're not sure that your children are yours. The Marshal asks the question. I've got the Marshal. If you've got the Marshal, he asks the question. We paskin, which means if a woman is a zoyna, that we paskin that the child belongs to the husband. Why? Because we go after Roiv. And even the woman is a zoyna, Roiv be'ilo sachar ba, faithless to a Marshal, Shlema. So he answers, but Hoshea was old. Since he was old, so therefore you can't say on that to Roiv. So Rashi writes a whole arichos. Mashal says we don't pass like this. The halach is we always say v'yivlisachar ba'al. I mentioned this once before. That the say story about Moshe. It's an unbelievable story. He was once being Masada Kedushin, and the woman started crying. So I need to speak to Moshe in private. And she said that the boy is the chassan is a mamzer because I cheated, whatever. And when Moshe walked out and said to her, "You're not believed. You have no nemanos. What you're saying is nonsense." And he continued without any nervousness the entire chuppah. There's a certain halachas in halacha, even if a woman says that she's a zayna, we don't always take her up and think. Yeah, look, says who says it? Nezer v'dak. Who did the quote? But it's not. The most Meforshim argue with that. Actually, Rashi brings it, and he brings from many Meforshim that all argue, and they say that's incorrect to say the fact that the Rambam in Nevuchim takes it even a step further, and he says the whole passage of Vayeva was a dream, and then we'll get very upset. He can't. Okay, we're getting off the point. So what happened was he said to him, and then I'll tell him to send away. If he can send him away, I'll send him away. The name of the woman that he took was called Goyma Bas Divlaim. Now, why was she got this name? And the board darshans the name Goyma. Everybody would finish off their desires in her. She was particularly attractive, and therefore they would get their heart's desire would be finished with her. Bas Divlaim, top of Zayin with Beis. The more darshans the word Divlaim as if it means double dibur. Dibur means slander. Dibur bas dibur, that people would say bad things about her and bad things about her mother. Meaning not only was she was a zona, but her mother was also a zona. Like a dried fig. A dried fig is very sweet. So she said about this woman, she was sweet like a sweet fig. Everybody would press against her like you press against a dried fig. That Goyma is conversion of to finish off, to destroy the money of Kalisol. That Kalisol at the time deserved destruction. That not only they deserved, they actually happened. That indeed the king of Aram actually destroyed the money of Kalisol. So that's the name of the Joshua Goyma Bas Divlaim. Call him Yisroel. Yisroel comes from the word Zera. Zera means to plant. When you plant seeds, you scatter the seeds onto the soil. So it's the same idea that Christ is going to be scattered into Golus. I'm going to destroy the kingdom of Beis Yisrael. Very interesting, by the way, is like this. There was Achav's family. Achav's family, Israel, was a terrible, terrible family. All the David Zor. Came along Yehu, who was anointed by Elisha, and his job was to annihilate the family of Achav, which he did successfully. He killed them all out. Nobody survived. And then Yehu was who said, you did the right thing. You were supposed to. And then what did Yehu probably go and do? Anybody know? He copied the ways of Achav. He started doing Avodah Zarah. And Hashem said, because you did Avodah Zarah like Achav, so I'm going to punish you for killing Achav. All the Meforshim asked Chavos Chaim and in the Sefer, what do you mean? Hashem told him to destroy Achav. He did the right thing. Says the Chavos Chaim, that if you speak Lashon Hara about something that toyeles, but you have that same blemish, you'll be punished for speaking that Lashon Hara. Because Yehu did the right thing, as long as he didn't copy him. Once he copied him, and he said the same thing whenever a person does kanos. You can only do kanos if you're 100% clean from that thing. If you're not, then it doesn't work. Okay. Don't call her the one that there's no mercy. I'll no longer have rachmanos and klal Yisrael. Will I forgive them? It's a lashon of exclamation. That's how the pasuk is supposed to be read. Agav, Ruchama Shein, why was she called Ruchama? He took it from this pasuk. And what happened was, she was born during the First World War. And she would struggle. All her English teachers, when she was little, had never heard of the name Ruchama. Eventually they changed her to Rakuma, which I'm not sure was a much better name. Anyway, V'atav Beis had another son. Lo yami, not my nation. Ki atem lo yami, v'noichi lo elechem, lo elechem. I will not be for you. So he had two sons, Lo Yami, Yisroel, and Lo Yuchama. After he had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, you should be like Moshe. Just like Moshe, once I started speaking to him, he got divorced. You have to divorce her. I've got sons. I cannot divorce her. I'm reluctant. I do not want to divorce her. The Meiri writes over here, we see that Shloch tells him to get divorced, and he objects. So it's Meiri, from here we see that divorce is a last-ditch resort. In fact, unfortunately, there's a lot of divorces at the moment, but he says it's a terrible, terrible thing, especially, says Meiri, if there's children. It's a good man mocking if you ever get into you, your wife is a zone and your children. You don't know if it's really your wife even, and you don't know if the children are yours. So Yisroel Shem Bonai, the sons that are tested. One of the 4 things that I acquired in this world. Anybody know how many there are in Mishnayos and Avos? How many Kinonim HaKshboch has in this world? There it says 5. There's 1 more here, it says 4. We'll see if you could tell us which one is not mentioned here and is mentioned in others. What are the 4 kinonim? Hashem acquired me before he did anything else. Hashem acquired the heavens and earth. How's a consume the mountain that she acquired? The nation that I acquired. Anybody remember the other one? Mission of us says Avam Avinu. Avam Avinu was another acquired. Okay. What's special about acquire? When you buy something for a lot of money, you treasure it because you realize it's a very valuable thing. Here says I acquired Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is my precious thing. You expect me to send him away? And you say send him to another nation. As soon as Yeshua realized he davened that Hashem should forgive him for being so critical. While you're davening for yourself, the 3 children with the 3 names each represents another curse, another decree that because of you I decreed on Klal Yisrael. He davened and he got rid of the decrees. Will be like the sand of the earth. Now, if you look at Rashi in Hosea, Rashi explains, if you look inside of the Gemara, this pasuk for Mitzvah Yisrael is Perek Hosea, Perek Beis, pasuk Aleph and pasuk Beis. The psukim we were quoted before are the last psukim in Perek Aleph. And Rashi asks the question that it doesn't work, the psukim. The psukim go like this. Hashem says to Hosea, I'm not going to like Klal Yisrael are going to be Lo Yami, Lo Yuchama, Yisroel, they're going to be going to Golus. And the next pasuk says, Klal Yisrael are going to be like the sand of the sea, and they're going to be gathered and saved. Asks Rashi, what kind of segue is that? What kind of connection is that? Answers Rashi, because you have to interject this whole Gemara. Rashi brings this Gemara down there. And Rashi says that after Yeshua realized what he had done wrong, he immediately retracted from everything he had said till then, and immediately tried to daven for them. And instead of saying that they're not my nation, the sons of Hashem. V'nikbetzu. Marshal says word v'nikbetzu means to gather, is the opposite of. Very good. V'nikbetzu is the opposite of Yisroel. B'nei Yehuda b'nei Yisroel yachtom. So all 3 decrees have been annulled. V'kibatzti lo yevuchamo is vuchamo, lo yami is ami. There is a word I'd like to say very, very briefly. The pasuk says, in the place where you said they're not my nation, I once saw it brought down from the Kabbalah. It's a very beautiful word. It's like this. The first of Shat is instead, b'mokri means instead. Instead of saying they're not my nation, they'll be said about them, the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the simple pshat. You could say it, b'mokri means in the place, in the situation. There are certain situations where a person says Lo Yami, then they're not the nation of Hashem. Let's say, for example, you go to a place, go to the beach, and you say Yiddish family, playing in the sand, jogging, playing football, or you see them sitting bowling or getting shikon, wherever it might be. Even in such a place, and even in such a circumstances, the gadlus of Klal Yisrael is that even in places and circumstances which people naturally would say, well, there it doesn't shine the ability to be Bnei Kelchoy, the nation of Hashem, even there it is recognizable that the Bnei Kelchoy. That's a very, very nice thing that sometimes you see, even in the midst of where everybody has to have downtime, whatever it may be, but even in such a time to be able to demonstrate that we're still Bnei Kelchoy. Being a master that makes a person die young. We'll see there are many Nevi'im that outlived 4 kings. So you see that being a king, being in charge, Marshall says, especially when the person uses it for his own interest, that it makes a person die young. And the apostle carries on, 4 kings. So we see that Yeshaya also outlived 4 kings. So Yeshaya outlived 4 kings, Yeshaya outlived 4 kings, and Yosef outlived 4 kings. Since they all lived out 4 kings, therefore you see that being a king is not a good recipe for living a long time. In these 4 kings, 3 are from Malchi David, which Malchi Yehuda, the proper kings, the Malchus of David, and 1 is from Malchus Yisrael. And why is he mentioned with other 3 in the same breath? If they should keep it Oshna Amos. Minolan de Imni, how do you count? They say Daba Ashur Ashur Sheben Baby May Uzio Yosam Ochos Yechizkiel Malchi Yehuda Ume Yerovam Ben Yosh Malchi Yisrael. So he's mentioned. Sorry, you mentioned separately. The Yerovam is mentioned within those 4 kings. Uminolan de they keep it Oshna Dichsiv. Veishtach Amatzah Kohen Beisei. Amatzah was a Rasha. He was a Novi Sheker, and he sent a message to El Yerovam Melech Yisrael. He told him, warned him that Amos, who was one of the Nevi'im, is plotting to kill the king. Amos declared that Yerovam is going to be killed. So he said Lashon Hara about Amos. Omar and Yerovam, what did Yerovam say? Chas v'sholom, Omar Yisatzadikach. I don't believe that a Novi would plot against me. V'im Omar, and if indeed he's trying to have me killed, Hashem told him. So therefore the Shechina spoke to him, and therefore instead of, since Yerovam ben Yoash was actually a Rasha, once in his lifetime refused to accept slander, and when he said, it's not sure, if it is true, Hashem told him to say this, and therefore he had no choice. Because of that, he was counted with the other kings of Malachi David who were tzaddik. Even though Hashem is angry, he still remembers his mercy. Shenema. The psukim over here were meant to be read all negatively, but they can be read with a positive slant. The pasuk says, "I will no longer have rachmanos on Klal Yisrael," and the way that's the pasuk pshat, but you could read it, "No longer will I punish, I will still have mercy." So you can read the pasuk in a very positive way. I'll continue to have rachmanos. Now, Shor says a different pshat. He says that the pasuk doesn't say I will punish Klal Yisrael, but just say I won't have rachmanos on Klal Yisrael. So to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing that even when he's angry, it's not negative, just not as quite as positive. The pasuk pshat is, would I have forgiveness for them? But you can read it, kinose eselem, I will forgive them. So the reason that Hashem sent us into Golus in order they should be gave Shenema v'Zraati Beretz, I'll plant them in the land. A person only plants in order to get back much more. This is a topic which the Chaim Kodesh and others, Ben Yoda, go at great length. The Gemara says over here, why did Hashem send us into Golus? What for? To get game. Why? Because the Torah compares Golus to planting, like we said, scattering like seeds. When you plant a soul, how much do you expect to get back? 10, 20, 30 times as much, right? When you plant with seeds of wheat, how much you get back? Probably 50 times as much. So Hashem said this is the Golus to get back much more. There are many questions. Question which Rashav actually asked one of the questions, that Tachlis Geret, we seem to be losing more, decreasing more, because more getting killed and influenced by the Goyim than we are bringing in.
That's what the Bach says.
The Chaim HaKodesh says. The Chaim HaKodesh says that we seem to be. The Chaim is similar. He says we're only getting very small amounts. So he says, the Chaim HaKodesh says that the Gemara over here means the Tzotzos HaKadoshim. It's in Parshas Vayigash, the Chaim, where Akshroch says, Yaakov Atiro V'Eidom Mitzrayim, or don't be scared to go to Mitzrayim. I'll make you a big nation, meaning that every country has Tzotzos of Kedusha, it has sparks of Kedusha, and we go there and we bring those Tzotzos of Kedusha back with us. The Michtav Eliyahu writes, Apideh Chapshat, a very interesting idea. He says like this, that every nation has certain midas. For example, he says the Germans are very, very punctual and very methodical. The English don't give up so quickly. They've got a stiff upper lip. That's right. You go to certain countries that have a lot of warmth. Go to other countries, they enjoy beauty, whatever. So Akshroch said this into Golus, in order that we should take those midas and bring them to use to serve Hashem with. So what would have happened if we wouldn't have gone into Golus? So he brings it interesting that what would have happened is we would have been able to be koine these midas by staying in Eretz Yisrael. But now that we did our Beis, we have to, so to speak, learn it from the nations of how to behave. Okay. There's a lot to be said over here, but we're running out of time. Okay. Another place where we see Akshroch Rachmanos, Hashem says, I'll have Rachmanos, and the one I never had Rachmanos before. Okay. Don't. Sorry, there's another gilsa that you have to add over here. The people who are not my nation are my nation. Who's not my nation? Gave him. So they who are not my nation will become part of my nation. Don't slander a servant to his master because you'll get cursed. A nation which the curse is the father and the mother they don't bless. What's the connection between these two psukim? Don't slander a servant and a nation which curses the father. Even a nation, even a generation of Kaisel, even when you've got a generation where everybody's doing Arbevis, like the generation of Hosea, nevertheless, you mustn't slander a servant to his master. Hosea was wrong for criticizing Klal Yisrael. First, has to be very, 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 very careful not to criticize Klal Yisrael. There are hundreds of Mekayos from going from all the Nevi'im that Shvochu gets very, very upset when people criticize, unless it's for Toyeles to a thing. It's time to say things bad about Klal Yisrael. First, has to be very careful. Pirzoinoi is Akshrochu did Rachmanos and Klal Yisrael that when we were saved in the days of Devorah, we could live in open cities. Open cities is prozim. Where do you have the word prozim? Megillah. So that's the simple explanation. The Gemara says another explanation. It comes to the word pizu, which is scatter. Hashem was kind to Klal Yisrael that he scatters amongst all their nations. Why? There was an apikor said to Rabbi Chanina as follows: we are much better behaved than you. Why? David HaMelech, when he eventually got power over the whole of Klal Yisrael, he became the ultimate king. So what happened was he sent Yoyo into Edom, and he killed everybody in Edom, all the males. Some of us would say different reasons, because Edom had killed many Edom. So what happened was he sent there, and he literally annihilated Edom. So the question is, he said that you see that when David HaMelech comes into power, what's the first thing he does? Destroys his enemies. But we, you Klal Yisrael we hate, and you're now a nation for many years. We don't do anything to you, so we're better than you. Klal Yisrael will get into power, kill the enemies, but we don't do the same to you. And the truth matters, the question wasn't valid because Edom had caused tremendous harm to Klal Yisrael and deserved it, and Klal Yisrael don't deserve to be killed. But many times, Rashi says, interestingly enough, he didn't want to reply to him because it's better not to speak to a Rasha. That's what Rashi says. If you can avoid speaking to a Rasha. But Marshall says that sometimes you can't answer with logic to a Rasha, you have to speak in their language, which is the more posh pshat. I'll get a Talmud to speak to you. He said, the reason you don't kill us, You don't know what to do. You don't know how to destroy us. What do you know how to destroy us? To kill us all, you can't kill us all. Why not? Because some of the Eden are not in your country. Again. Kill the people that are just in your nation. They'll call you a horrible, terrible, cut-off nation. That means really, if all the Eden would live in England, England could destroy all the Eden. The problem is that only a portion do. And the Eden in other countries will then see England doing that and they'll criticize. So therefore, no nation could ever get around to doing it. He set him and make a shvur by that we dissolve the Romans. With this thought we go to bed, and with this thought we get out of bed. Meaning that we grapple with this thought all the time. How can we destroy Klal Yisrael? And we're unsuccessful because we know that we can't destroy a part, and we'll end up being criticized by other nations. Unbelievable Gemara, no? The Shvur understood the place. He knew that we can't survive under the terrible Roman decrees. That's why we went to Bovel. That means Bovel was actually a place which was much nicer. I used to listen to history showing from Beis, and they speak about this very lot. That what happened was, while Rabbi was in Eretz Yisrael, things got worse and worse and worse. That's why what happens is, if you look in the history, which I once made your chart, so in Eretz Yisrael, that Morim get less and less and less, and in Bovel it gets more and more and more. What happened in Bovel, in Eretz Yisrael? The decrees of the Romans were just too much. That's all. Gemalchus and all the other decrees that came with it. And what happens eventually was too much. Shmuel made it that Torah should flourish in Bovel. Yeah. So Tosfos points out here. That's why Hashem arranged America now. It's his song. Tosfos points out that actually Bovel became very bad. He says eventually there was a group called Chaverim. We had it actually in Shabbos in one place, where were very, very evil people, and they became very bad. In fact, the end of the Babylonians was very sudden, he said, because you've got all the Go'im and everything else, and suddenly Babylon was completely finished in Eretz Yisrael. Within about 100 years, there's no Torah left in Eretz Yisrael. It's all moved over to France and Germany. Babel is very low lands, so there's not good air, and therefore they suffer more, and therefore the Geula comes quicker. So I'll redeem them from Sheol, from the depths. The language of Babel is very similar to the language of Torah. And Rashi explains, and the Apostle explains that the idea is that if they would go to another place which is a similar language, they would remember Torah better. He, so to speak, sent Klal Yisrael home to where we come from. Where do we come from? From Avam. Where did Avam come from? From Babel, from Orkastim. So therefore, that's why we went to Babel. A person gets annoyed with his wife. Where does he send her? The Beis or back to her mother's house. Three went back to the plantation, to the original plant, meaning to the origins. Yisroel, Kesef Mitzrayim. Yisroel, Kesef Mitzrayim, the money of the Mitzvah, Ksav Luchos. Yisroel, Hadamon, that Klal went back to Babel where we came from. Kesef Mitzrayim, and he took all the money from Yerushalayim. So the king of Mitzrayim came to Yerushalayim, took all our money, he took back the money which we emptied. The letters flew. Just two small points. What's the proof from the pasuk that the letters flew back to Shemayim? So Rashi points out, to be from the Mashal elaborates, normally if I say I broke something, I don't say I broke it into your eyes. I say I broke it in front of you. I should have said Shabim lifnechem. Why le'enechem? Le'enechem means something which made your eyes open up in wonder. Something miraculous happened, and what was that? Is that the letters went up to Shemayim. One other small thing, Zacham HaKadosh says that Vayenatzlu es Mitzrayim. Actually, he says in Parashas Bo, they emptied Mitzrayim, and they took out of Mitzrayim all the nitzotzis of Kedusha, all the Kedusha sparks that was there. So the fact that they took all the money was symbolic of the fact that they took all the Kedusha. When Kaisar started doing Aveiros, so to speak, then the financial went back to Mitzrayim. It's interlinked. A person gets the Gashmis interlinked to the Ruchnis, so to speak, and therefore when they took all the Kedusha, Mitzrayim, they took all the money. Why did we go to Babel? Today we're going to finish all that Agadata, which is about 10-15 lines, and then we're going to be finished. In Babel, there's a lot of date trees, and its dates are very, very healthy. They are satisfying, they're nutritious, and they get the stomach going. So therefore, the digestive system going. So therefore, the Akshrocha range which go to Babel in order to be able to learn. They gave him baskets of dates. How much can I buy of this for one zuz? 3 in for a zuz. Some say it means 3 baskets for one zuz. 3 whole baskets of dates for one zuz. A whole basket of honey for one zuz. And they can't learn more. They would learn even more. If I could get dates for such a cheap price, I'd learn even more. Just very pshat thing. Either he was getting 3 baskets for a zuz, but when you squeeze the dates, you get much less. So 3 baskets for a zuz comes to a basket of honey for one zuz. 1 basket of honey produced from 3 baskets of dates. Alternatively, it means 3 dates. And from 3 dates, he was able to produce so much honey, they managed to get a whole. It's because it says tlas bezuzah, it's a bit of contradiction. Nashon discusses this. 3 for zuz, and then he says 1 basket for zuz. What's the answer? Either 3 baskets to 1 zuz or 3 dates. That night he ate loads of dates, and that night he suffered from diarrhea because what happened was dates make the system work. The problem is if you eat too much of them, it's no good. So tzaru, Omar Moled Sana, some of the most of a basket full of poison, definitely poison for one zuz, but they're able to learn. How can a person learn when poison is so cheap? It's very, very difficult to be able to learn. When Mashiach comes, all the nations will say, let us come back to the house of Hashem, Beis Elokei Yaakov, to the house of the God of Yaakov. And the question is, why to the house of the God of Yaakov? What about the God of Avraham, God of Yitzchak? So when Mashiach comes, we'll go to the house of the God of Yaakov. Why that one? Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Avraham, Yitzchak, Elo. Not like Avraham that he said about how the Beis English mountain. A mountain. We went to dive in the field. He called it the house of Hashem. So therefore, since he called it to Beis, when we want to go to Beis Hamikdash, we won't want to do like Avraham. It's not like Yaakov. One more Gemara. I don't want to say one small point. We shouldn't speak about this Gemara. Literally every opportunity he could, and he always say the same word. He used to listen to the Shur a lot. He said like this, that a mountain is an empty spot. Avraham Avinu when he wanted to serve Hashem, he would leave everybody and be mispoided. But Yitzchak felt that the mountain is empty, but there's no fences around it. It means a guy can come up to you. So he decided that's not good enough. He went to a field, and that way, then nobody should be able to disturb him. But Yaakov realized that that's no way to live. The only way to serve Hashem is to cut off all distractions from the goyim. So he said the only way to serve Hashem is to go into a house. The more a person goes himself in an enclosure and cuts himself off from the influences of the goyim, the more success he will have. And that's when Mashiach comes, we'll realize the truth of Yaakov. And therefore, when we talk about the Beis Hamikdash, we'll call it the house of the God of Yaakov, because only Yaakov really managed to keep himself Kodesh, because he lived in a house, not a field. The day when the nations will be, when the Christ will be gathered, will be as great like the day where Hashem created the heavens and earth. Shenema. V'nikvetzu b'nei Yehuda b'nei Yisroel yachdo. Kaisel will gather together with some Moshe Echad. They'll make themselves one leader. V'olu min haaretz ki godol Yomi Yisroel. The day when the scattered nations come together is very great. The Midrash, the word Yom, uksi b'yeher v'ayvoike Yom Echad. The same word Yom is used by creation of the world as the same word for the kibbutz gadol. Says the Ben Yehuda. What's the comparison? The idea, he says, is as follows. When Hashem created the world, he took and he made something out of nothing, which requires a whole new creation. That's something which nobody else can ever do. So to speak, when Mashiach comes, the change will be so dramatic. It will not be like gathering a few bricks and making a building out of it, but rather like creating something out of nothing. So therefore, the Pasuk says that the day of the Kibbutz Goliath will be like a whole new creation. Kaisel will come to a new existence. There's a Chasam Sofer that writes about the Kol Pesach. Actually, I should quote it earlier. He says that he doesn't understand how Klaisel could cope with the Kol Pesach with the eating and the roasting. He says the answer is that Klal Yisrael will have new kinds of bodies with a much stronger constitution. That's what he says. And therefore they'll be able to manage with it all. So that's why we compare the day of Kibbutz Goliath to the day of Brias Shvavo as a whole new Bria. Okay. So, what? Yeah, yeah, all he says even more than that, not just new ones, it'll be a whole new Bria. Okay, we did a very lot. It's a very interesting Gemara. Did I go too fast? No. Yeah, I might slip in here and there. And that's the end of that. Gadded, we're back to the halachas and the Hashem. No, not to the Minu, Kodshim. Quite long dafim. It doesn't. We're not on anything because we've got.